Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Kevin back for yet another video. As I told you in the last video, you're not poor, you're mentally broke. This is the follow-up that you've been waiting for. I'm really excited because I got a really good friend of mine, George Andreas, joining me here from VictoryPivot, which you're going to hear about very, very shortly. But as I talked about in the last video, we're looking at finances as a part of our wellness, as part of our happiness and success in life. And as I did in the last video, we talked about the financial mindset, the things that we need to have in our mind before we can actually start attacking debts and finding out the best ways to make sure that we're successful in life. If you haven't watched that video yet, you're gonna need to do yourself a favor, hit the pause button on this video, go over, check out part 1, and then come back and see this, because like I said, you can't get into this type of information without your mind being right. And so what we're going to talk about in this video is just some personal stories and just sort of talk about some of the things that we've been through, things that we know can work to help you be in a much more better financial position. And so, as I mentioned, I got my homeboy, my boy from back in the day, George Andreas, who is with VictoryPivot, which I'm going to just turn it over to you, George. These people don't want to hear me talk all day. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and introduce VictoryPivot. And while you're at it, just tell us a little bit about what the company is and why you started it.
Absolutely, Kevin. Honestly, it's amazing for me to be having this conversation with you right now, and especially after all the years that we've known each other. It's truly a humbling experience for me. So thank you. As Kevin mentioned, George Andreas, I founded a site called VictoryPivot.com. And in a nutshell, it's a career coaching site, although with a very strong focus on the mindset. And I started this site as a way to really to give back, to help people get to that next level in life. You know, I went through a journey of my own where I realized that there were a lot of things, even though I've had success in my life, there were things that I felt I could be operating at another level. And so I went on this journey where I was searching for what that was. And through this journey, which you know, you'll see a lot of that journey in VictoryPivot. Its purpose really is to help those who are dealing with limiting beliefs or fears that are holding them back from getting to that next level in their life, wherever that might be, whether it's finances, your career, wealth building, relationships, health. I mean, we cover it all. And so again, I have two parts of the site. One is which you have the details, the ebooks on how to, you know, get to that next level in life. And I also do a weekly blog every Friday, again, heavily focused on mindset. And yeah, it's very exciting, and looking forward to working with anyone that is looking to get to that next level.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And I love what you said there about limiting beliefs. I mean, I know you and I have had a conversation in the past too, where you mentioned that as well. And that's perfectly fitting for the channel that I have here, because, you know, we grew up in the same neighborhoods. We came from the same circle. And we can understand how there's a lot of people, even those that we grew up with, that even till this day sometimes have very limiting beliefs. And that's why I dedicated this channel to a lot of things, or all things sort of mindset and wellness. And so in the last video, you know, I talked about a couple of different things, as you mentioned, mindset, that I think hold people back. And I know that they weren't it wasn't the most longest of lists, but I want to just recap for those that are here that have watched that last video. And then kind of we'll just get right into what we want to talk about. So in the last video, I mentioned things like, you know, people believing things that are sometimes misinformation. We were talking about that one scripture reference about, you know, money being the root of all evil, when it's really the love of money being the root of all evil. And sometimes we hear these things growing up, and it makes us have a certain perception about money that may or may not be accurate. We talked about money being seen as a status symbol, right? How bad that can be for you, because then it has you chasing things for the wrong reasons. People obsessing with their debt. Again, that's a mental capacity thing. It's where we just sit and think and think and think over and over about it, and sometimes to the point where it debilitates us from actually making a plan to get away from it. People that don't think long term, thinking very much in the moment, and even respectfully to those who might be sort of in a financial struggle right now, regardless of where you're at, you still have to think long term, because that's the only way that you're actually going to get out of it. And then those that sort of associate how much they make per year as sort of the cap as to what they can do financially. And sometimes we know that that can be part of those limiting beliefs. And so, but I know you mentioned ebooks, and I don't want to forget this. I've taken a look at your ebook, and there's a lot of great information in there. And as we'll talk throughout this conversation, there are some things that I'll touch on with my own personal story on how they connect. But I want to let everyone that's watching know that for the month of July, you've been gracious enough, George, to give away a free copy of your ebook. Now, it's important that you don't just come and watch this video just to get a free ebook. So you're going to have to stick around until later on in the video, where we're going to give you the exact details that you need to do in order to get that free book. So with all that being said, let's kind of dive into a couple of questions, some conversation about finances, personal finances, and stuff like that. You good? You ready to go?
Let's do this.
All right, cool. So I just went through a couple of the reasons why I think people are the mindsets that people have that might be holding them back. My first question to you really is, what do you think is, in your opinion, one of the things that maybe isn't on that list that I went through that you think it might be holding people back?
I think a big one, and we've always heard about going to school, and okay, it's important that you have your goals, and we've heard it many times before. And I feel that having a clear picture of where you're at, I think it's extremely important. And I feel that many people, they don't really have a compass in terms of where they're going or what they're doing in life. And so I feel that, having a clear picture of where you want to go, I believe is really a big step in really your first step, really, before you kind of get to that next level where you're able to take a look at your situation and say, okay, where am I now? Where do I want to be? Right. So from a perspective of getting clarity, I think is definitely one thing that everybody really needs to kind of begin as a starting point.
That's very, very key. Having that clarity in mind. But one of the things I find is that sometimes one of the key things that stops people from even getting into that clarity is that people are honestly almost embarrassed to even recognize where they are financially. I know, I don't want to make it seem like, yes, I mentioned in my last video, I've been able to pay off a large sum of debts. I don't want to make it seem, unfairly like I was, homeless, because that wasn't, it's not one of those stories. But definitely in the beginning, I had to sort of become very clear in my mind as to where I wanted to go. And it wasn't really until I started to say, okay, look, what is it that I'm trying to do? How do I plan to get there? That I was able to sort of start making the moves that I wanted to make. But I'll admit that even in the very beginning, when I had a lot of debt, I think I was a little bit embarrassed to even admit to myself that I was in the position that I was. Why do you think it's so hard for people to really be honest up to themselves, not so much to everybody else, but even to themselves about where they're at?
In one word, fear. I truly believe that it's fear of facing the truth. And think about it. You may not know exactly when you were in that situation where you were in that financial state that you want to be in. You knew that you were not where you were supposed to be. And I feel that fear is what keeps people from being honest with themselves, because focusing on their debt ultimately is going to bring pain, right? By ignoring it, you don't have to face it, right? And
True.
so
Yeah.
it's easy to kind of put that aside and say, well, I know I shouldn't be doing that, but whatever, I'm not going to look at it now. I'm just going to keep going. And it's also when you're not where you need to be, there's that feeling of overwhelm. So by looking at that, to get deep into where they are, I think it almost can shine a light on, and it may make it magnify the problem, and almost get them into a state where, instead of trying to acknowledge where they are and move forward, instead what happens is that, and again, and I've seen it happen time and time again, and I've heard it, that people ignore it, just hoping that by some sort of magic, the situation that they're in is going to go away if they don't think about it. So they continue on this habitual spending pattern, and then they might get that moment when they get that credit card statement where they look at it and they're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay for this? But then they don't focus on that, and then they move on, and then they unfortunately find themselves digging themselves deeper.
And you mentioned fear and how that can really kind of impact them. And you also mentioned about how they kind of stop thinking about it. And I almost compare that to when I was talking about the fact that people sort of don't think long term, and they don't have a plan, and their financial plan is really, let me just play the lottery until it comes through. And that sometimes is part of it. It's that feeling of, I don't want to think about it, so I'm just going to put my hope into something that will happen big and make it all disappear. But that can be so dangerous, because the longer we take to actually just look ourselves in the mirror and say, look, like, this is where you're at, this is what we need to do, let's create a plan. It's like, let me just push it aside. It's that out of sight, out of mind kind of mentality. And it just spirals worse and worse and worse. And we're not even getting the credit cards yet, but that I think is sort of the result of them kind of putting it off, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes down to a plan, and like you said, putting it off, I think that, some people are afraid of what they're going to see, because there's something about writing something down that, I mean, you know about it, but when you start examining it, and then you start seeing those numbers before you and you're looking at them, it can get scary. And it could also discourage people from even taking, that step. And that's why, you mentioned mindset. Really, mindset is everything, right? Because if we have to get to that point where you're just not happy where you are anymore financially, and you're ready to make a decision to make that change, and you're putting all the other things that are possibly going to scare you aside.
I love that saying. You got to get to a point where you're sick and tired of being sick and tired of seeing these things. But I think that's a great way to maybe even open this up a little bit, is the fact that knowing, especially when you're in debt, you have to be honest with yourself and say, okay, look, I'm about to go down an adventure here where I know I'm going to see some stuff I don't want to see. I think it's when we're not prepared for reality that it really scares us. But if we go into it looking, look, I know I've got 5 credit cards, I've got, you know, a card payment, I've got a mortgage, I got whatever it is. I know I'm going to see some potentially scary numbers. And if you, it's like psyching yourself up for it. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes maybe that's the very first step, is just to say, look, I know I'm going to see stuff that I don't want to see, but it is what it is. I'm already here.
Right.
It's not like you're planning for this. Like it is what it is. And so I think that would be the first thing that people really need to start doing, to get themselves to the next financial position, is to be very honest with themselves and take account for where they're at. Kind of no excuses, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
Um, what would you say? And I don't know, maybe if we've already touched on it in the beginning here so far, but what financial mistake do you think people are making that they need to stop right away? Now, I know a lot of people are in different spots, but
Yeah.
you know, if you had one thing that you think probably generally speaking, a lot of people are going through, what financial mistake do you think they really need to stop right away?
Well, first off, we talked about clarity. They need to get clear on where they are, how much they owe, how much they're making. That's number one. The
Mhm.
second thing is, and this is a big one, is confusing wants and needs.
Mm.
Okay. I hear my kids say this all the time, and I have to remind them often, you don't need that video game skin or Fortnite skin, or this is what you want, right? Let's
Yeah,
get that
yeah,
clear. Okay. What
right.
we need, money to pay for electricity, food in the fridge, the shelter. I go that, so I'm trying to explain to my kids, but it's funny that, I'm explaining it to my 6 and 9-year-old. But there are, I think, a lot of adults who have that same issue, and they see something, and there's not even a thought. It's like, I want it,
Hmm.
you know.
Right.
And I think that's, that could be a problem. That
Hmm.
could, and this could have been, habits that we've had, from a very young age, that kind of stuck with us when we talk about, these environmental conditions and things that we've gone through, to kind of get us to where we are. But again, the confusion of needs and wants, to me, is something that people need
Hmm.
to really get clear on. And I mean, here's the thing, and we talked about this briefly, in our prior conversations,
Hmm.
but there's this negative connotation around money, and
Hmm.
you touched about it briefly today. And the reality is that having money is not a bad thing.
Right.
And there's that scripture. It's it's easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle than a rich
Yeah.
man to enter the kingdom of heaven, right?
Right.
And so we read about these things, growing up, and then you can look at those, and you may not see them for what they really mean. You can
Hmm.
start misinterpreting them, and ultimately creating without even knowing, a negative link or association to money.
Right.
And look, we all know, I think at this point, we don't have to say that money does not buy happiness.
Of course
But
not. Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm going to
But
say this. I'm going to say
yeah.
this.
Yeah.
You don't usually hear people that have money say
Hmm.
that. It's usually
Right.
the people that don't have money
It's
that are
true.
saying that. Now,
Yeah.
again, I'm not saying that money buys happiness, but
Yeah.
if you're someone that has a good emotional home, you're positive, you're a happy individual, having more money is going to allow you to have better experiences in life. And
Hmm.
we were talking about this the other day. I got a boat a few years ago,
Yeah.
and my mindset was, you know what, a boat. Everybody would tell me boat stands for bring another thousand, right? And I've always been all about
Yeah.
investing and using cash flow to buy, the toys, and that's very still a part of the way I think.
Right.
But I remember my wife said, we should get one because it's going to enhance our experiences.
Right.
And with it, we'll be able to create more memories.
Hmm.
And so she sold me on getting another boat, but I told her, on the condition
Yeah.
that I can buy the boat below market value so that if I did want to sell it, I
Right.
could sell it and make a profit or at least get my money back.
Right.
So, we talk about, being, the different things, thought process, but that's how my mind thinks. I
Right.
don't think I think in terms of, if I buy this, can I enjoy it and possibly make my money on it? And that
Right.
will actually influence how I
Hmm.
purchase. And
Right.
so I purchased that boat at the end of the season when nobody wants a boat,
Right.
because at that point, people are looking at having the boat as an expense. And
Hmm.
so for me, I took that as an opportunity. Now we're talking boats here, but you could do
Yeah.
this. You could talk about cars and say there's a time in the month that
Yeah.
you buy a car and it's going to cost more, depending on the salesperson's quotas at the
Yeah.
dealership. And so again, these are some of the different things that I do. But going back to the financial mistakes,
Hmm.
um, you can tell I have a very positive association to money.
Right.
Okay.
Hmm.
We were talking, I grew up, in Flemington Park, and you know what? My father only worked, my mother stayed at home. And you know what? One thing I remember is I realized the value of money at a very early stage, but
Right.
my parents didn't have the money to give it to me. So I had to figure out, how am I going to get it?
Hmm.
So I started washing my friends' dishes just to get their money,
Yeah.
right? Their
Right.
allowance, right? And again, we're kind of going off track here, but it's more about mentality and my
Right.
association to money. It's very positive, because I don't only see money as what it can buy me, but I
Hmm.
see money as, how can I use the money to help others,
See,
to give back.
that's a great kind of segue, because it's touching on something I wanted to ask you about, because I know your book talks about it. It gets into a little bit about emotional spending, and
Right.
some of the things that you were talking about there was really bringing that back to my mind. You're talking about, it's not just for the sake of having a boat to say, look, I have a boat, but
Yeah.
it's for the ability to create memories for your kids and for you and your spouse. That's an emotional thing. You were talking about people buying cars and stuff. People spend money at different times for different reasons, but it's connected to emotion. And I know for me sometimes, listen, I'm no different than everybody else. You get into a bit of a funk, and all of a sudden Amazon is your best friend, right? Or you go to the local mall. I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't been to a mall in a while
Absolutely.
because of COVID, but when we can get out and go shopping, people go shopping. Why, to your opinion, why do people have such a connection, or where is that connection emotionally for people? Because I think these are the things that we start to talk about, where people have to recognize, you know what, man, if I be honest with myself, I actually do have an emotional connection to my spending. And if that's not a positive, you gave the example of that emotional connection being more about not the toy, quote unquote, that you're buying, but more so the value. If I go to resell it, what's the connection emotionally to people and their spending habits?
Yeah, I mean, look, people, they'll often engage in emotional spending because it's a way to take back some control during a
Hmm.
period of, let's say, overwhelm or low self-esteem. I mean, you mentioned, for example, you get bored, you're in a funk, and guess what? You pick up your device and you go
Hmm.
on Amazon and you can start making purchases, right?
Right.
Because when you make a purchase, instantly, how do you feel? You feel amazing. You're
Oh
excited.
yeah.
You're anticipating that package to come in, and then
Oh my.
it comes through. You know what I mean? And you open it up, and at that moment, you're not thinking about, can I afford it? You're not thinking about that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But here's a question that I feel like we should be asking more of, that we don't, and that is, why are you buying that, or do you really need that?
Hmm.
Because oftentimes we're buying things, and when we talk about emotional triggers and why we're buying things, um, they're oftentimes are things that we don't really need. right?
Right.
And so, you know, some of the emotional triggers, and there's going to be a lot more in the ebook, but I'll mention a
Mm-hmm.
few. One big one is fitting in. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep up with the Joneses, the Kardashians, whatever you want to use, right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, you know,
Yeah.
you get a pair of Nike Airs, your friend gets a pair of Nike Airs, and then suddenly, you know what? They have them. I want them, right?
Right.
You get that, you know, new boat or new car, and your friends have it. And
Mm-hmm.
now you feel that if I don't have that,
Mm-hmm.
then you know what? I'm not on the same level, you know?
Right.
And I find that, you know, oftentimes people are trying to keep up to other people and they're trying to impress people, you know, sometimes with
Mm-hmm.
their spending as if people actually care, and they don't.
And
Think
many
about
times
it.
people really don't care. And
No.
you're and sometimes I saw a meme once where someone said something to the effect of, you know, you're spending all this money to impress people that you don't even like.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, that's right. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like it doesn't make sense to me. And the problem is that in that moment, okay, that whatever reason that might be, keeping up with the Joneses, sometimes it could be jealousy, right?
Hmm.
You know, purchasing something to prove that you can, even though
Right.
you can't, right?
Right.
To make yourself feel like you're either more important, but
Hmm.
ultimately it doesn't do that, right?
Right.
And what it ultimately is doing is digging digging them in a bigger hole. That's going to
Yeah.
be harder for them to get out. And I read this quote once, and it's like, if you don't watch what you spend your money on, you're soon going to have to sell the things
Hmm.
that you really want and
Right.
to actually stay
Yeah.
afloat.
Yeah.
And to me, you know, people don't think about that. They just continue on that path.
Hmm.
And another big one that I've seen, and I've heard from some clients that I've spoken to, is the fear of missing out. You know,
Oh yeah.
so
Yeah.
you know, you see something on television and they've done a great job, you know, at you know, selling you, you know, hitting on all those emotional strings to
Yep.
get you to buy something, right? And who
Hmm.
knows, maybe it could be, you know, you got to buy it because if you don't, you know, you might miss out. And
Right.
so you have that, we've heard the FOMO, fear of missing out.
FOMO. Yeah. Yeah.
That's another, you know, emotional trigger. And so
Hmm.
it's good that we're talking about this, because a lot of these things that we're talking about, people are doing, and they're
Hmm.
doing it without thought. They're not taking a step back to really say, like, why am I buying this?
Right. So when you have a client, do you know,
Yeah.
that has maybe that emotional spending issue?
Yeah.
One quick thought or a piece of advice, like how does someone who might recognize watching this video and they say, you know what, yeah, that's me, but I sort of struggle maybe with finding the best way to identify that or
Yeah.
get over this. You know, what's one thought you would have to sort of give someone a piece of advice on how they could try to control it, if it's at all possible?
Absolutely. You know, that's a great question. And I'll tell you that, you know, everything everything that we do in life comes down
Hmm.
to two things: the desire for pleasure
Hmm.
and the avoidance of pain. Those are the two factors. Okay.
Okay, I like that.
Now,
Yeah, I got that.
so what I do, okay, and there's different techniques, you know, that I would work
Hmm.
with clients on this, but what I would do is I would help them to take whatever that limiting belief is, or whatever that bad habit is that's holding them back from getting to that next level. And what we would do is we would create a negative association or link to
Hmm.
whatever it is, that habit or that behavior that they're trying to change.
Right.
Okay. So that would be the pain. Okay. So for example, okay, um, if you're going to be continuously borrowing money, putting things on credit, okay,
Right.
um, what is the negative consequence or impact in the long run, if you continue doing that, how will that impact your family? Okay.
Mm.
How will that impact, your, what you own?
Right.
What if you continue down that path and as a result, you had to sell your home? You had to sell your car? What if it got out of hand? And quite frankly, I have a close friend of mine who was living almost a double life, and
Wow.
he was spending money and never told his wife that he was really digging them deeper into a hole, and he was too afraid to tell her. And as a result, when she found out how much they were in debt, she divorced him. And
Yeah.
the point that I'm trying to make is, we take the behavior that we no longer want and we create a link, and that link is going to be specific to that individual based on what's important to them, right? And so that individual really needs to associate the path that they're currently on as a destructive one that has the potential to really do some major damage, not just to them, but in their family life, okay, and everybody that surrounds them, okay? And we make them really feel it, okay? And then what we do is, remember, we're driven by the avoidant, we don't want the pain, but we want the pleasure. So then what we do is, we then talk about, let's look at the future now, and let's look at what life would look like if you did control your finances. What kind of house could you buy? What are your dreams and aspirations? You're looking for that beach house. Do you want that boat? Do you want that nice car, or whatever it is that you have on your checklist, right? Maybe it's nothing material. Maybe that you have this deep desire in your heart to help people. And the life that you're currently living right now, you know what? You're not going to get that respect, that attention from those individuals unless you make that change. And so we take, the negative associations to not changing, the positive associations to changing. We bring them up, and then ultimately what your brain does, and we get into more depth, obviously, I'm trying to provide a summary, but ultimately what you're doing is you're changing your links. Okay, you're changing those angers and that conditioning of how you view things. So in this case, and we've done it with others that are dealing with financial, health, so to speak, and who really want to break that pattern and want to elevate themselves. And this is why we start with the mind and changing those associations and links to get them, first off, to remove any potential negative associations that they had that's preventing them from moving forward in their life. Right. So
that's awesome, because I mean, you must be reading my mind, because it leads to sort of, as you were talking, the next question I sort of wanted to sort of pick your brain on, because the struggle for a lot of people, it's easy for us, to look at all the things people need to do, and how they can start moving. But I think one of the struggles that some people may have is, if I already feel like I don't have a lot of money, I don't have extra, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. And if I even try now to start getting out of this hole that I'm in, I'm not going to be able to even give myself anything. I'm going to be just literally even more so, just giving up all of my freedom to my bills, right? And so I think there's a misconception that a plan of getting out of debt is that the person will have no money for themselves. Would you agree? I mean, I read over it very, very briefly in your book. I know you were talking about I've heard of this rule, the 50-30-20 rule, as an example. Can you help me just reassure sort of some of our viewers that, taking the first steps to getting out of debt doesn't necessarily mean that you're literally going to have no money for yourself, because there's a bit of a strategy to the way that you structure your budget.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I mean, at the end of the day, we definitely need to, we could, if we create that association, or we tell ourselves, for example, that we're not going to have money if we put a plan together,
Mhm.
I think we need to start asking ourselves different questions.
Mhm.
Okay. Better questions are going to get us we're going to get a better response out of ourselves.
Right.
And so for me, the real question would be, if I don't put a plan together to change the state that I'm currently at,
Mhm.
what will be the consequence of me ignoring it? I mean,
Right.
theoretically, if you're living your life beyond your means, you don't even have that money to even consider
Right.
until you're acknowledging where you're at and eliminating it.
Mhm.
And so, for me, it's like, if I don't do this, if I continue this way,
Mhm.
it's really gonna hurt. So for
Yeah.
me, I would tell someone, listen, make a list of
Mhm.
all the things that you will lose if you continue to have this mindset.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because to me, you need to see it on paper. You need to
Right.
see what is all the things, and then put another list right beside it, and then make that list of what you're going to gain by putting this
Right.
plan together. Right?
Okay.
Because here's the reality. The reality is that if you're not in a good financial position right now,
Mhm.
what you're doing now is not working.
It's just going to get worse. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
only going to get worse.
Mhm.
So, the reason why I wrote this book
Yeah.
is because I really wanted to provide people who have poor financial health with really proven steps that are
Right.
going to guide them so
Mhm.
that they can dig themselves out of this hole and start changing the questions they ask themselves, start changing
Right.
their mindset and their habits,
Yeah.
so that they can get on track. Because here's the question we have to ask, and you would think that everyone would ask it: why is it that this person has no debts,
Mhm.
right? What are they doing differently? We've all heard the saying, success leaves clues. And so
Yeah.
for me, I always say, look, regardless of where you are in your life, you probably know someone that would be considered an expert in that area.
Right.
So if finances, for example, is not an area that you're actually doing well in,
Mhm.
either find a role model or an ebook like the one that we're going to talk about today
Mhm.
that will provide you with all the tools and the steps that you're going to need to really
Yeah.
change your
Yeah.
mind, your habits, and the way you're doing things today.
And I like that because, even in that same vein, one of the things that I realized with finances is that we're always looking at sort of spending elsewhere, and we're not looking at taking care of ourselves. And maybe that's part of the avoidance part because we know that there's that tie and connection to us. And I remember even when I was starting to, when I realized I had a lot of debts and I was trying to pay all these things off, it got to a point, you mentioned kind of creating that plan. And it was very important to go, okay, I know that I need to kind of live my life and I need to be able to do things. And so in the beginning, what I was thinking was, man, I gotta pay off all these debts. I gotta get rid of this. But that means I'm gonna sacrifice. I can't go out with my friends. I can't buy anything for myself. It's all gonna be bills, 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 bills. And then I realized for a second, kind of what you were talking about. It sounds weird to say it, but it's not about me. It is, but it's not about me. So we start to think so much about ourselves that we forget that we're really doing this for our families, for our futures, for our immediate circumstances. And so what I had to start doing was really taking a look at what my expenses are, right? looking at those fixed costs, looking at what are the things that I just can't live without, right? It's an
Right.
apartment, right? I gotta have groceries. But the one thing that I learned that, and it sounds so weird, but part of getting out of debt, you know, people will say paying yourself first, or at least paying yourself towards the top end. You know, not everything's going to go to bills. No matter what, you have to give yourself something. You are a
Right.
human. It's your money. You're the one working for it after all. You have to be able to sort of create that plan and budget things accordingly. And it's not until people really take a look at a budgeting plan, which I know you have examples of in your book. And by the way, I'm just going to say this for those that are watching. As much as I'm talking about your book, George, I'm not making a single penny off this. This is not a sales tactic for me. I just love connecting with good people that I know have a lot of good information. And here on my channel, it's about helping the viewers. It's not about making a quick buck. I can make bucks in other ways. But I know in your book, you talk about kind of having a plan and creating a plan, and you've got some templates and guidelines on how people can do that. But I think the one misconception is that people think that in order for me to start getting out of this, I'm going to have to put myself absolutely last. And while you will have to make some sacrifices, putting yourself last isn't necessarily the way that things happen. And one of the key ones that I found that worked for me, and I'm going to say that because I can hear my earbuds chirping at me, so they might cut out in a minute. I have to pause and get my other headsets. But the one thing that worked for me was, and I'm sure you know about this one, is the snowball. Again, so it's not just about, okay, I got all these debts, but the snowball effect. I remember my aunt and my uncle gave me Dave Ramsey's book, and in it he talked about different ways of being able to get out of debt. And one of the ways that you could do that was a snowball. In fact, there's the avalanche, and there's a couple of cute names for different strategies. But I remember for me, particularly after my divorce and having a lot of the debts and stuff that came out of that. And again, you're going from a 2-person household to a 1-person income household. You know, my son was young at the time. And so it was a struggle in the beginning. I thank God that, you know, I was able to overcome that. But that strategy of snowballing and taking sort of that credit card and paying off that one credit card. And when that one was paid off, taking the amount of money I was spending on that one credit card, not counting it as free money anymore, but just saying, now I'm going to like double the payments on the next one. I love that snowball strategy. Have you ever used one of those snowball or avalanche strategies?
Listen, for me, I would say that the strategies, so just to give a synopsis here, for me, I would say the snowball method would probably be the most effective method in comparison to the avalanche method. So very quickly, for those who are not too familiar with the difference, I know you covered it.
Yeah.
But the snowball method is really taking, okay, so here are all your debts, and you're choosing the smaller ones first, the ones that you can pay off right away. And so what that does is that it gives you a small win. It gives you that sense of motivation, knowing that you just, you know, successfully did something. You paid off a debt, and it's all about momentum, right? As soon as you get that momentum, it motivates you, it drives you. You paid off the first one, you get excited, and now you want to pay off the next one, and then that momentum builds. So that's the snowball method. And to be frank with you, I think anybody who's looking for a strategy, and the book covers it in more detail in terms of the benefits and exactly how to use it. But the avalanche method, which is another strategy, what that does, it takes a different approach, and it really takes a look at, let's say you have, you know, 3 or 4 major, you know, debts that you owe. It takes the one with the highest interest rate, and it focuses on paying down that one and putting a chunk in it a little bit at a time. Now, the
Right.
reason why I think the snowball method, like again, both strategies are effective and they both work.
Yep.
Although I think that it may be a good idea to start off with the snowball method because you're getting that momentum, right?
Right.
And then you got to take a look at, maybe you might want to shift to the avalanche method because, you know, when you're paying those high credit card interest rates or loan interest rates, and it's compounding,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a larger, you know, balance for those debts. If you don't attack those, what's going to happen is you're just going to continue to compound, you know, what you're owing, and eventually you're going to feel like you're in a deeper and deeper hole. So the reason why I like the snowball method as a first step is because it allows you to see those quick wins and get started.
Right.
So I would definitely recommend starting with that approach to get that momentum going.
Yeah, you know what? And to your point, I started off with the snowball method, and then sort of as I gained momentum and as those small, quick wins allowed my financial pocket to grow because I was actually starting to save more money, then I had the ability to now be a bit more aggressive and change to the avalanche method. So, you know, it's never just one way all the time. There's a lot of different methods that can be used. Sometimes you use them in conjunction, one right after the other. But there's a lot of different things. And I think we're going to come back and probably do another video and give more on that. I know we've talked about your book a couple of times, and I mentioned at the beginning of the video that we would be giving away a couple copies of your book. And so for those of you that are still here with us, thank you so much for staying around with this program. So if you want a free copy of that ebook, it's a $20 value. We're giving it away for the month of July. So starting from this video till July 31st, in order to get a free copy of this book, all you need to do is go to VictoryPivot's Instagram page. George, why don't you give them the name or the at for Instagram page?
If you go to @VictoryPivot and just you can hit a like or subscribe. If you desire, send me a private message and with your email address, and we will email you off a copy of the ebook that you can use as a guide to help you overcome.
Look at that. So simple. All you need to do in order to help get you on the way is, again, we're not marketing anything. You're not paying for anything. It's just free. I don't benefit from this. George is doing this out of the goodness of his heart. All you need to do is go to @VictoryPivot on Instagram. Make sure that you follow them, please. You know, this is about credibility. I want to bring to the viewers people and information that is of value. And this is of value, trust me. @VictoryPivot Instagram page, make sure you follow them, and then shoot George a DM message and just say, hey, look, I saw Kevin's video, you know what I mean? You know, I'm not poor, I'm mentally broke, and I want that ebook. That's all you need to do. And we're running this up until July 31st of 2021, just in case, you know, these videos stay around forever. So I don't want people thinking it's every year. But as many of you wanted this book, we're willing to give that book to you for free. Just as a bonus for saying thank you for watching this video for all this time so far. I got one last question for George before we get out of here. But definitely make sure you check out VictoryPivot's IG page. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, definitely subscribe. I mean, we're bringing you this great information, so why wouldn't you support? So I got one last question for you, George, and then we're gonna wrap this one up. I know we've been talking for a while. It's so interesting that these things can just go if we let them go. But one last question for you. Kind of, I know this is, I'm gonna maybe give a little bit of a quick plug for your book. High level overview of what someone's sort of debt-free plan should look like. I know you've got a very brief recap towards the end of your book, kind of just a couple of quick steps. You don't have to get into all the details, but just what do you think is something that everyone's plan should include? Oh, did I lose you there? I may have lost you. Can you give me 1 sec? I will. One second. 1 sec. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you?
Okay,
Am
perfect.
I not
I'm good.
on? Am I
Yeah,
good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Perfect.
Sorry, I just
So,
technology, you're in the middle of something and you lose it. Go ahead.
listen, we're good to go. We're all good. We're gonna pivot.
Yeah, there you
So
go. Victory pivot. There you go.
that's right. So yeah, in the ebook, we have 6 steps, and so we keep it super simple. I wrote this book so that you can go through it step by step, and if you follow these 6 steps, you will achieve a debt-free life, 100% guaranteed. And so we'll go through all of them quickly, and I'll just, like you mentioned, I'll give a couple of points.
Yeah, just high
And
level. Yeah.
so the first one, we actually touched upon it earlier, and that is you need to acknowledge and understand your current financial state. Okay, so you need to come to terms. If you're not in a good financial situation, you need to say that, and you need to make that decision. That's the first step in this process. Hopefully anybody who's watching who's not where they want to be financially is going to say that to them and really mean it, because if we don't do that first, nothing else will follow, right? So you need to come to that decision. And then we touched upon this, you need to really understand where you are. How many expenses do you have? What are your total debts? How much money are you making? How much do you have in savings and investments? You need to write that all down. You need to get crystal clear before you can move on to step 2.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense? First goal?
Yep.
Okay. So the second step here is you need to find out where your money is going. All right. And the way you do that, obviously, the easiest way, look at your debit and credit card statements and go through them line by line. I mean, you'll be surprised on some of the things that you're purchasing. I mean, I remember a few years ago, I was blown back and I was telling my wife, you know what? We should get a membership to McDonald's here. We go here so frequently, right? I mean, I'm seeing like literally every other day. And, that's a different story. We had to change our eating habits on that one. But it really paints a picture because, again, when you go through a 30-day summary and then you look at 60 days, I mean, you may want to start on the first 30 days and then just take a look at what you're doing, because most of the things that we do on a day-to-day are habitual anyways. So we're probably doing it month in, month out. Okay.
If I can pause you there for one quick sec, George, I'll tell you, I can completely agree with that. I did that. Even it was just the last time I did was probably about a year and a half ago. And I really started to realize that I was spending about $300 a month on, Tim Hortons, McDonald's, Wendy's. You don't, and the difficult thing is, and I think the worst thing that was created for us was this debit card, because you don't see the money. And so, and now I'm running around with my iPhone and I'm tapping stuff all over the place. And you don't realize just how much $2, $1.15, 27 cents, how they all add up. So I agree with you 100% on that one. I love that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so when we move on to step 3, we have, and we touched upon this earlier, we need to understand, and it's going to be a very individual thing here, and that is, what are your emotional triggers?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and we touched upon those. Is it fear of missing out? Is it jealousy? Do you find that you're making purchases when you're sad? And you need to look at yourself, and perhaps when you look at your statements, it's going to trigger some of those purchases. And then you can start looking back at, why did I buy that?
Right.
And then you can start asking that question and hopefully identifying those emotional triggers so that you can put a stop to them once you know what they are. All right. So now we move on to step 4. And again, we touched upon the importance of budgeting. We talked about the different methods that we can use, the snowball method, the avalanche method. The beauty of the time that we're living in now is we have all these apps, okay, literally. And a lot of them, most of them are free. Sometimes you subscribe for free and there's a small amount if you want the premium package.
Right.
Although literally you can go to a site called greedyrates.ca, and they will list the top, and they'll even do a comparison chart for you and tell you the ones they'll rank them from the best to the worst, and this one's free, this one's not. And ultimately, the beauty of these apps are they allow you to link the app to your bank, and you can track your budgets manually. You can ensure your spending is under control. In fact, they'll send you alerts if it's out of control, to kind of keep you in check. Yeah, and they'll even make recommendations to save money at a sensible level, right? And so we talk about the you mentioned very early on, and I recall I didn't answer it, about there's that 50-30-20 rule to budgeting. Okay, and I mean, it talks about this in the book, but it's really taking a look at your income, how much you're bringing in, and then allocating a percentage to the things that you need.
Right.
Okay, so the method that is used here is 50% for the things that are fixed, your mortgage, your rent, whatever it is, so groceries, and then 30% on the things that you want. Now, that 30% might have to be adjusted. So that 50-30-20 rule, it's used as a default template, but you need
it's
to
a
take
general
look at
guide.
right, because maybe that should be 5% at the state that you're in right now versus the 30% recommendation. But you could, once you've done your assessment of your financial state, then you can say, you know what, maybe I should be moving, we'll keep the fixed to 50%. Maybe we're going to do 20% on the wants, and then we're going to put, 30% or 40% into your financial goals. Because what we're talking about here is getting yourself, mentally unbroke, so to speak. But once we do that, it's also important to start implementing good habits, like how to save money. You talked about earlier, setting automatic withdrawals from your account. And literally, you can do this on your online bank. I'm sure everybody, mostly all of us have it. You don't even have to call someone. And literally, you could put at the first of every month, and you put an amount together that is comfortable based on your assessment of your financial situation. And you might say, well, if I don't have enough money now, how am I going to do it? It's amazing, though, when you actually have that money taken out first, before anything else, you will find a way to make whatever's left work. And the beauty of it is, you don't look at that, but it's accumulating. And it's accumulating. And 1 year you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, I got an extra $1,000, $5,000, whatever it is. You're accumulating. And again, this is all about, doing things with the right state of mind, but also you're planting, you take away the bad habits and you got to sow and plant the good positive habits. And that's one, when you're looking at budgeting, is one that you want to do right away, because things are going to happen in life. You're going to have plumbing problems, you're going to have electrical problems, whatever the situation is, you might lose your job.
That emergency fund is something that you just have to keep. It's got to be there. And I don't care if it's $10 in it or if it's $100,000 in it. Everybody needs an emergency fund because things just occur. It's just the way it is.
And if you don't, if you do, have this new habit that you're forming, and it's literally the easiest thing that, and I challenge all your viewers and my viewers who'll be watching this to, if you're not doing that already, you can do that right now. You can literally, after you hear this or see this video, you can go onto your online banking, and even if it's just starting at $25 a month, just get it started. I hear so many people, and we've heard it time and time again, we should do this. I wish I could do this. Just do it. Make a decision and make it an absolute must. And to me, at least, you're going to tell your mind that, and look, I can do something, and I can do something positive, and that's going to encourage you to start implementing new positive habits in your
And you know,
day-to-day.
and that what you're talking about there too, when you set up that automatic, withdrawal at the beginning of the month or whenever you get your paycheck,
Yeah.
and you put that into a savings. Another way of saying that is you're paying yourself first.
Right.
And this is sort of what I was touching on earlier.
Yes.
With people assuming that me making a plan to get out of debt means I'm going to like forfeit any money for myself. And while that money that might be coming out at that, when you get your paycheck, really should be for your savings, just in case, it's that emergency fund. At the same time, what you're doing is you're saying, I'm so important that I deserve X amount. Now, again, let's be reasonable, but I deserve X amount first. I need to pay myself first, because at the end of the day, yes, I know I have bills to pay, but if I'm paying all the bills and I have a whoopsie and something happens, I don't got, as I said in my last video, 2 nickels to rub together. You know what I mean? In order to survive that. And something as simple as having, I've said it a couple of times here, but having an emergency fund, it's something I got from Dave Ramsey's book. And it's, even if it's $250, $200, $100, set yourself a goal and you say, look, I'm going to, whatever it's going to take. I don't care if I got to sell some old shoes. I don't know if I got to roll up my quarters and my nickels and bring it to the bank. I'm going to have X dollars, whether it's $100, $200, whatever you can afford, as a just in case. And then when you get that, then add more to it. Because trust me, if you have a vehicle, at some point, something's going to happen with the engine, right? You're going to get a flat tire. You're going to need a tow truck. You can't be dipping into credit cards all the time just to be able to do that. So by paying yourself first, even small and incrementally, this is why we all pay insurance, for just in case. Right. When it comes to car insurance, we got no problem paying car insurance. Exactly. But when we say you should save $10 a month for yourself, we say, no, I can't do that. But why? Right. Pay yourself first. I know I went off on a tangent there, George. But,
no, I agree with you. And listen, that's so important. And that's a habit that, again, if our viewers don't or are not implementing, this is the easiest one that you can do right away and get yourself off on the right foot. Mm-hmm. And when that kind of gets to that next level, then we can have a next conversation on where you can put your money to grow the money that you already have. And we that could be another video at another time, right? Yeah, we'll have to do that another time. Yeah. Right. So so we did step 4. That's establishing your budget. Step 5, and we talked about this again, and that is determine the strategy or method, the snowball or avalanche, to actually start paying off your debt. And then the final, so once you've done all of that, then that's when the final step happens. And again, we're kind of jumping ahead here as we go on, but in accordance to the book, the final step would be, that's when you're putting your saving strategy together. So we go from the budgeting to the strategy to pay it off to the saving, right? So we kind of talked about it. We kind of jumped around a bit, but the book kind of takes you through everything on a step-by-step with the checklists already there, and plenty of links also where additional resources that you can actually select that will give you some more tools and techniques awesome in this journey to financial freedom. Awesome, man. I think you did a great job at sort of summarizing. I know, like I said, we kind of jumped all over the place, but it's always great conversation, and I think that was a great wrap up to it. And as your book does so very nicely and very succinctly, puts those steps into a plan. And so I think it's a great opportunity for us to sort of wrap it up there and let we've given our viewers a lot of information to digest. It's been a really great conversation. Again, I'm going to repeat it. You know what? VictoryPivot. I've known you from when we were kids, George. So, I know who you are. I know what you're about. I know your story, and you know me. And I honestly love to see other people
And you've inspired me throughout the years too, right? I mean, I don't have a boat, but you know,
but it's coming.
Inspired me.
It's coming, Kevin.
It's coming, man. It's coming one day. But as we talked about before, it's not about us and the toys. It really is about us trying to give back to the viewers. We've all been there. We've all been at some point, maybe a little bit embarrassed. I know you shared a story about someone you knew that was embarrassed to sort of talk about their debts. Finances is not always an easy conversation for people. We all have, you know, credit cards. We all have some probably emotional spending that we've done. And we've all racked up some debts that we probably wish we didn't. But at the end of the day, hopefully through stories like mine and yours, we give people the ability to understand that you shouldn't just be stuck at, oh my goodness, this is where I'm at, and really take the time to look forward to, this is where I can get to. And your book is perfect for that. I think it's a very easy read. So we're not getting into hundreds of pages with very complex accounting words. It's a very simplistic book and very easy read, very well put together. And I think anyone that's going to take advantage of getting this free ebook between now and July 31st of 2021, by all you got to do, as I said before, is go to @VictoryPivot on Instagram. Make sure you follow them and then shoot George a DM and let him know, hey, I watched this video on Kevin Joseph's YouTube channel. You know, I don't want to be poor because I know I might be mentally broke, but I want that free ebook. And that's all you got to do to make sure that you get that free of charge. Look at that. We're giving you free content, free information, and all that good stuff. So George, I really appreciate it. I know I've taken up probably more time than you expected to. You got your family to get back to you today, but I really appreciate you taking the time to join me here on my channel and give our viewers a lot of good food for thought. And I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you, Kevin. For the viewers who don't know this, I've actually known Kevin. I actually recall this in my memory. I must have been about, I don't know, 6. You were 8, and we're sitting in the front of the church pew, and I remember in my head our feet couldn't even touch the ground. That's how long I've known you, Kevin. So to be you know, fast forward now many years later, to be able to have this conversation with you where, you know, we're putting out mindfulness content to really, you know, help our viewers get to that next level in their life. I think it's truly beautiful, and I'm honored, you know, that you know that I can share this this opportunity with you, and I wish you, my friend, all the best.
Thank you very much, man. And you know, obviously we're going to stay in contact after this.
Of course. Yep.
Thank you once again, George. I really appreciate everything that you've done to be here and give up your time. For all of the viewers, those of you who have subscribed, those of you who have stuck around to this very point in the video, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace and love.